um, gear up for a session wherein our speakers share insights into how gaming can empower the next generation. And let's do that. First up, if I could please invite Vivan Sharan, who is a partner, Koan Advisory Group. He will be moderating the session for us, and he will be spearheading this finale session for us. So we have with us Vivan Sharan. Vivan, thank you so much for joining us. That being said, I'd also like to inform everyone that Dr. Sasmit Patra, MP Rajya Sabha, has joined us virtually, and we will get up and we'll start the discussion. Before we have our next two speakers also join in, we'll also be having Shri Naresh Maske, MP Lok Sabha, as well as Shri Lavu Sri Krishna Devarayalu, MP Lok Sabha, who will also be joining us in a short while. But as of now, let me just, I've been informed that we already have Dr. Sasmit, who's already joining us virtually. I just want to quickly check if Sir can hear me, if I am audible.
Yes, you are. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you very much for joining us this evening. And let me also inform you that we have our session moderator, Vivan Sharan, partner Koan Advisory Group, who will be spearheading the session. So I'd like to quickly hand it over to him to take the session forward with you before we have two of our next set of speakers also join in. With that, Vivan, over to you.
We're fully cognizant that you're joining us from Geneva and you've managed to take the time out to do this between a lot of hectic travel. So we're not going to prolong the agony for you. I know you've been wanting to talk about this subject all day. Look, sir, unlike many parliamentarians, we have perhaps in this country about a fifth or a sixth of parliamentarians who are really engaging with issues linked to digital markets, and we're glad that you are one of that cohort. That cohort is gradually expanding, but still, you know, everyday issues take precedence. You know, whether it is getting electricity and water and roads fixed. This is really, in some ways, a peripheral topic for many, many parliamentarians. So how do you firstly bring some of these discussions from the periphery of you know, public interest as you view it, to somewhere closer to the core? And what is the rationale for doing so? If you can start us off with that, sir.
See, Vivanji, am I audible and visible to you?
Yes.
Okay. So, firstly, thank you so much for accommodating me on a virtual talk this evening. And I'm really grateful to you for giving me this opportunity to come live with you from Geneva. I actually am on a parliamentary delegation to the Inter-Parliamentary Union that happens twice a year. So I'm just between sessions. The next one starts about 30 minutes later, so I requested if I could start up with you. And I'm very grateful that the Gaming Convention has allowed me to do that. So when we talk about primarily the issue of gaming and reference to it that it is on the periphery, and there are more core issues that are still relevant or live to such issues. I must say that when you see a gaming company's name on the jersey of the Indian cricket team, I don't think it is anything peripheral, because an Indian cricket team's jersey is being beamed into every single individual's television and smartphones on a given day. So therefore, today to refer to at any given point of time that gaming is not in the centrality of discussions would be to miss a point. So I would say that gaming today has become one of the, I wouldn't say the most engaging, but surely one of the most emerging and an issue that has to be engaged with, whether one likes it or not. Now, there are many impressionable minds which have an idea about gaming. Some are engaging on it on their own without properly advisories. There are issues of skill and chance. I'll come to it later when we extend the discussion. But at the outcome, I must say that this is an integral aspect, not only from the perspective of gaming, but from the entire ecosystem of how we engage with gaming, not as a, whether it's on a skill, whether it's on a chance, who has the access, what is the entry levels. So I think the discussion has already gained centrality. There are the juries out on both sides. Some say that no, it is the necessary evil. Some say that no, this is the future and we have to deal with it. A third category probably looks at it as a great opportunity where you can leverage the Indian youth and bring them on board on gaming. So the jury is out, especially on different dimensions. But it's good that the jury is out because that essentially means it's being discussed, it's being debated, and the more we discuss and debate about it, the better.
Thank you, sir. You've also written extensively on this topic. I happened to see a report recently, and you contributed to a foreword where you stressed the need for first thinking about classification as a precursor to regulation of this space. So can you speak more to that theme?
You see, the Honorable Supreme Court has already laid down its views through a judgment, and not only one, several so far, where it defines gaming between skill versus a chance. Now, whether it's a game of skill or whether it's a game of chance, when we talk about a game of chance, it essentially falls within the realm of, let's say, a loosely said lottery. Let's say, you do something and you get a reward based on whether you have luck or not on your side. The second aspect is the game of skill. There are many games in which you have to have a lot of skill, dexterity, whether it is in terms of applying your analytical skills, in terms of your logical skills, in terms of your dexterity of thinking, or in terms of your analytical aspects as well. So when you actually go in for a game of skill, that is completely different from a game of chance. And that is where I speak about classification. It's like, you put the apples and the oranges together and you label the box as apples. This is what's exactly happening with the gaming industry today. So you have games of skill, you have games of chance, and you're putting all of them together as gaming. Now, whenever gaming is being spoken about, talked about, people immediately refer to, oh, you're probably indulging in rummy, you're probably indulging in poker games, you're doing gambling, you're doing lottery, and therefore that is not the kind of gaming. I agree with that. But I also agree with the fact that there are a number of online games which are actually being played on the skill, the dexterity, and the understanding of the player. So based on those basic qualities that a player has, he or she will either win or lose. Now, I would like to take you back from the online version to the basic version, the conventional games, which is probably carom or a chess. Now, let's say, for example, tomorrow you were to play carom and chess online. Now, would you say that is also a skill or that is a chance? So therefore, there are a number of ways by which, so a lot of the conventional sports are actually going online, which is a virtual ecosystem. Therefore, classification is critical to be able to regulate them and not put all the apples and oranges together and label the box as apples. That is what is happening right now.
So just to play devil's advocate there, sir, why must we carry forth this dichotomy between skill and chance when we think about regulation? So this need not be something that is preordained. We are looking at a history of judicial intervention in this sphere. But are there other sort of compelling reasons why you think this is a good distinction to be the point of departure? And if so, do you feel that there is the political will or the institutional capital, so to speak, to be able to weigh in on this effectively in a very large, heterogeneous, complex space?
Effective and then probably weigh in on the gaming side. Indian politics is always very wary about anything to do with gambling and lottery, which is considered as sins by the larger section of society. So therefore, no political class or no politician or any parliamentarian wants to be seen on the side of probably being mistaken for supporting a game which is probably to do with gambling or lottery or areas like that. So that understanding has to be there. A lot of times when we talk about online gaming, the popular perception is, "Arey, yari to sab gambling chal raha hai." So no politician, even if it's not, there are very few people today who really understand what is online gaming versus the larger majority that probably has a perception of what is online gaming. So between the perception and the reality, there has been a big gap. And that gap cannot be put together or bridged together by politicians. It has to be done by gaming companies. And this is where gaming companies have not dealt with the public at large. You've dealt as probably, content providers or platforms, and they are as users, but in terms of actually building up that confidence between the consumers and the users, that here is an opportunity where it is not a matter of chance, it's not gambling, it's not lottery, it's not luck, but it's actually skill, which has been dealt with in a myriad of issues. That is one aspect. So therefore, you have to make that bridge somewhere. public policy engagement of gaming companies has been very poor. In the last 5 years I've been in Parliament, there have been probably 2 or 3 occasions that I've met, gaming conventions like this. It's not because whether I was invited or not, but there is no discussion. I'll give a very simple example, which probably will help you understand. I'm a part of the Communications and IT Committee, Standing Committee of the Parliament. Recently, the Standing Committee released its list of subjects it's going to take up for discussion for the next 1 year. It's in public domain. Everybody has seen it. Right? It's on the website of Rajya Sabha, or the Lok Sabha, in fact. And there is reference to digital currencies, there is reference to various other laws, but there's no reference to gaming. Which essentially goes to show that at this point of time, gaming is not being considered for discussions as much. Forget about being dealt with. So that is the level of gap we're dealing with. Secondly, what has happened is, gaming is now associated with big money. Anyone and everyone has a perception. I'm not saying that everybody is becoming billionaires or unicorns, but there is this feeling on the street whenever you meet people, gaming, oh, it's a lot of money. They're making tons of money. They're making pots of money. And what happens is, for a parliamentarian or a politician, to be associated with something that is making indiscriminate money is politically incorrect. So therefore, you will not find a lot of political will out there of people trying to stick their neck out and trying to say that, look, we should go for it. Very few people who are foolish enough like me would probably ask for classification and regulations. And why regulation? Because I find a social side of it, which probably I'll discuss with it later.
No, that's very, very interesting, and allow me to prod you further on this communication strategy or lack thereof of gaming companies in India. Do you have any analogues from any other industry segments where you feel this work of public communications by industry has been done well and has actually precipitated change and a public interest conversation that is meaningful, that has drawn in stakeholders and created some sort of a public discourse, so to say, which is not non-binary, because right now we have a very fractured discussion on gaming. So are there examples that you've seen, whether from your professional life or your life in Parliament?
You see, let me move away from tech for a moment. You might say tech again is a space where probably there is engagement. Let me talk about sustainability and sustainable development. Today, a lot of the sectors that are actually dealing with, let's say, jobs. I come from Odisha, and steel and iron ore is very big in my state of Odisha. So when steel and iron ore, they engage with me, they don't engage with me of talking about their problems as steel industry. They engage in terms of what they are doing to actually become more greener. What are they doing in terms of reducing carbon footprints? What are they doing reducing carbon emissions? How they are turning their brown jobs to green jobs? How they are able to use sustainable economy? How they are bringing about circular economy in their processes? So these are the measures that a parliamentarian wants to really talk about. It's not about that how much of money you're making or how much of problems you're having in your bottom line. That's not my problem. You're a corporate entity, you deal with it. My issue is when it comes to citizens. Let's say, for example, if you see the number of smaller videos that actually play out, someone says, I lost 97 lakhs, and just virals across. So what you're essentially having is, those bad apples are actually giving the sector a very bad name today. So the question is therefore, do you have champions? And that is where the sector is completely silent and sleepy. Why? Because if you have champions, if there are people whose lives have changed because of online gaming, where are they? So are we speaking about the good? If we don't speak about the good, the bad will get reflected ultimately. And that is what I see today. Sorry, go ahead.
No, just again on that, very, very interesting take again from you. And if I was to put myself in the shoes of a gaming operator, I would say, look, you've taken the example of conventional industries that are regulated. Some are over-regulated. There are entire pollution control boards and institutional mechanisms that have been created to oversee their good actions or bad actions. And some of the sustainability reporting, for instance, that you alluded to, or other good citizenship messaging that's coming from these companies, it's also taken, upwards of 50 to 60 years to get to a point where they've realized that that's something important to do. Gaming, on the contrary, is something that's 5 or 7 years young, in a sense, in this country, at least at the scale at which you begin to think about public communications and corporate communications more seriously. So just that temporal dimension, is that something also to keep in mind? And second, I know that there may not be any answer to the temporality of it all, but how do you also ensure, you gave an example of the 97 lakhs, the financial fraud and scams proliferating on gaming and other apps is absolutely rampant, big priority of Government of India to try to mitigate some of that today. But ultimately, it's also a very long tail that you have in this industry, or any digital industry, because there is no licensing, there is no registration regime that is enforceable currently. So you have many developers, and therefore many actors in this space. Some are good, some are bad, some are ugly. How do you incentivize, in a sense, good corporate citizenship in such a complex playing field? And it also goes back to what you said about this area being associated with a lot of cash in general, and high profitability and so on and so forth. So there is perhaps no correlation between the dominant actors in this market and from who are sort of above board and that are brands that we recognize, and some of them are advertising, as you said, in Indian cricket and so on and so forth. So they're very mainstream. And also other actors who may be equally big in terms of profitability and cash flows and so on, but are sort of under the radar and part of that long tail, so to speak. So it's direct competition. It's not even large versus small when you talk about the long tail in this space, which is unlike many other spaces where the direct competitor will also be large in many instances. So how do you look at some of these issues, again, from a very discursive hat that you wear of a parliamentarian and a professional who's been thinking about these things?
You see, I would put it very simply, any sector that is left unregulated will have a long tail. And a portion of that tail will be quite green, and people will get affected. So thereby, my argument in the first place, that regulate it and cut out the rotten apples. That's the point number one. How do you get to that? You get to that by not only convincing the government and the parliamentarians, but society at large, that look, there are good actors and there are bad actors. And the good actors are doing this good. That good is not outside. Excepting wearing it on the jerseys of the Indian cricket team, what is the good that the online gaming industry is to be done to society? Has it helped the youth? How? Has it helped the women? How? I'm a housewife, how has it helped me? I'm an unemployed youth, how has it helped me? I'm a retired professional sitting in my house, how has it helped me? So the success stories, if they do not come out, people will not talk about you in the positive sense. So the long and short of policy or legislation always is, politicians or political actors or parliamentarians will always move when the citizenry wants them to move. They sense the pulse of the people. Right now, the pulse of the people is, well, probably we're not very sure about it. That is why even if, let's say, the government is thinking about, regulation or doing something, it may not be wanting. I'm not part of the government, so I can tell you very freely, but they may not be wanting to be seen on the wrong side of people by saying that, look, you're trying to legalize something which is actually causing a lot of problems to people. So, like even today, online gaming is being seen as a sin industry, unfortunately. And as long as you consider to look at it as a sin industry and saying, okay, it's making a lot of money, you can become a millionaire overnight, this kind of symptoms, these kind of narratives are not helping it. So therefore, I would say temporality kept aside, if the industry itself were to talk about the good it is doing, how it is impacting lives. Let's say, for example, one session for this convention should have been, how has the gaming industry impacted lives? When I say lives, it's someone, listening in a category B, category C, category D city, how has he or her life actually changed and improved and transformed? So the transformative effect of the gaming industry has to come out. When the good comes out, it enables politicians, parliamentarians, everyone to then take force and take front. Till you don't make that effort, don't expect people to come out and put a red carpet. I'm again playing the devil's advocate. Everybody will give you pious platitudes. Everybody will tell you what you really want to hear, and ultimately nothing will happen. So you can keep on going around in circles.
So I think we've covered a lot of ground, but let's also reflect on the theme of the session for a couple of minutes. One is, I think the theme is trying to tie together the supply side and the demand side. And as a parliamentarian, you have to look at both the users as well as the producers from a public interest perspective. So first, just extending what you were saying about the responsibility of gaming companies, how do you get also users to use some of these tools more responsibly? And, again, any analogs that you see from other markets, other industries, or other activities for that matter. Because, again, there is a lot of high-risk activity that we can engage in on our mobile phones at any given point of the day. And really, there is very little friction separating us from that high-risk activity. It's never been this easy, in a sense, for users of all ages, vulnerable populations, minors, etc., included. So how do we build that sort of a public zeitgeist also, in a sense, to address this from a whole of society lens?
Well, I don't have a very simple answer to it, and I'll give you an analogy to it. Maybe that will help you to understand. Whenever you go onto an online broking platform, you would have certain stocks that you have probably bought. It's on a certain account. And as soon as you open it, it says on the first page certain disclaimers. One of it is that 9 out of every 10 people lose money on FNOs, futures and options. Do people stop playing futures and options? They don't. Why? Because it's human greed. It's human behavior. The finance minister shouts on the top of a voice and says that, look, futures and options, I'm taxing more because the middle class is actually losing a lot of money. You rather do value investing in shares and compound it over 10 years and you'll get the benefit rather than doing the FNOs. But FNOs wipe out, jobs, careers, families overnight. So do we then ban FNOs? We don't ban FNOs. FNOs are still very much there. Futures and options are there, despite such disclaimers. So to put it very simply, to tell people, look, be responsible is a very tall ask. So it's like, asking from the basic doctrine of human values and whether you should be tempted at all. Humans will be tempted. More so when you come from a point of scarcity. So therefore the temptation is, how quickly can I become rich, or how quickly I become affluent? And here online gaming gives you that opportunity mentally. So therefore I said there has to be a lot of education that the online gaming industry has to do, which comes to a basic principle of how do you align the curriculum, the education of from schooling right up to post-graduation level, where students, youngsters, let's say for example, any youngster sees the name of a gaming company on the chest of Virat Kohli, he'll immediately buy into the idea. When you see the star players of this country, going ahead and saying that they promote X online gaming or Y online gaming, so they are very impressionable. They're going to buy in that this is a great stuff, this is good stuff. So therefore, there has to be greater education, there has to be greater awareness, there has to be curriculum building. So it's not necessarily from the perspective of only regulation, which is a commercial aspect to look at, but the overall ecosystem of ingraining the gaming parameters and principles. I'll give you another example, which is a non-financial parameter, PUBG, which is now Battlegrounds India. You see a number of people actually having serious mental disorders playing that. At some point of time, the government also had problems with it. So people would not change. What they need is greater awareness, greater education, greater hand-holding, greater success stories, and greater clarity relating to specifics of how it can be used in a more methodical manner, which can provide them greater dividends. It is not an alternative to employment, but it is surely an alternative for a better life going forward, apart from their professions.
In terms of educational curricula, just last couple of questions for you, but in terms of educational curriculum, at what stage of a student's journey are some of these messages most important? Do you have any examples of what has been done well, again, in terms of integration of some sort of a digital citizenship module into course curricula at the school level? And how much of a difference will it actually make to young adults who, again, they're high-risk category because of the kind of systemic pressures we have on employment. Again, a lot of them may be turning to apps where they feel like they can make windfall gains, especially if advertising is, as you mentioned, luring them into some of these spaces. So how do you begin to tackle this issue? And what is the role of the state as well in all of this? Because there are some state governments, for instance, that are toying with creating regulatory superstructures. Tamil Nadu has already begun to do so. But there is also a commensurate responsibility to look at how do you create institutional capacity to deal with some of the problem behaviors that you mentioned that will not simply go away through messaging on part of industry.
You see, gaming cannot be looked at from a state-to-state perspective. Tamil Nadu has a regulatory framework, but Odisha has banned it. Now, what is the sense that a person gets? That, okay, in a certain state, this is good, in a certain state, it is bad. So when you have this differential engagement model, it raises suspicions and questions in the minds of people. So if you have this differentiality going on, it is not going to help you going forward. When I talked about curriculum, I talked about engagement. When we talk about students, and you asked me the first question that at what age do you think a child should be actually educated about it? It's the age when parents give a smartphone in the hands of a child. That's the age. Now, if the smartphones become much easier for kids who are at class 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th, so obviously it will be. So when a youngster who has a fair idea about how to go about life and has a smartphone and has an account, then obviously that person becomes the point of contact and going forward. So I'm not saying go and start teaching them to the third graders or the second graders or the first graders. No. But responsible gaming, and it's not only responsible gaming, it is the entire ecosystem of how to go about fiscal prudence in life. Fiscal prudence doesn't only mean online gaming. Then you're trying to categorize and stereotype. If it is about FNOs, if it is about online gaming, if it is about lottery, it's about gambling, it's about various other aspects of life. Do we have a curriculum which talks about fiscal prudence and fiscal way of life to lead? The values, we talk a lot of moral science, but none of the moral science that I had read or my kids read today has anywhere a chapter which says that be careful about certain aspects of life. So there's a lot of morality being preached, but there's a little less practicality being preached. So I think there is a lot more practicality that needs to come into these moral science lessons so that people will also, at an impressionable age and going ahead, as I said, the day a young man has a bank account and has a smartphone in his hand, he becomes a consumer for you, a potential consumer, if not a real consumer. So that's the time we need to really start engaging. And even the platforms, what is happening is, in trying to outbid each other, sometimes the advertising really goes out of the wind. I'm not talking about the responsible 2, 3, 4 players, but there is this larger temptation of how to grab more eyeballs. And in doing so, we sometimes miss the mark of how far and not more. That limitation we have to also define for ourselves. Unless we do that self-regulation as an industry, it will be very difficult for anyone else to point out to us.
And sir, finally, in terms of educational curricula, what about what we can do better for actually capacitating some of the developers? You know, students are also on the supply side of this. So how do we ensure that, again, to stay ahead of global developments, where gaming is certainly a beacon of high technology in many ways, where a lot of emerging technology is now coalescing. How do we ensure that some of our course curriculum is up to date to reflect those realities? And also, how do we integrate gaming as a use case which is interesting for students to engage with disparate technologies?
I think the gaming industry as a body needs to engage with the Ministry of HRD and try to first incorporate a module of that to the NCRT books, rather than going state to state, because you have the CBSE module and then you have the Kendriya Vidyalayas, etc. So there is already an NCRT curriculum and a CBSE board that actually does that. So I would say instead of going to states and actually running around, start centrally through the CBSE and the ICSE boards, and then probably go down in terms of the components. Where you talk about that here is an opportunity, but this opportunity is not like a lottery, that you become rich overnight, and it has its perils. Provide case studies of that. It also has its champions, where people have actually done well in life. So online gaming, try to explain to them, is not an alternative to professions. You need to still study, you need to still have an education, you need to still have a job. Online gaming is an opportunity for you to probably engage. The default could be money, but the primary happiness should be actually being on part of the game. I think that is where we are missing the mark. There's so much of focus on the money being made rather than probably the gaming that we're missing.
Sir,
So I think the joy of gaming has to be introduced, not the joy of making money. So that would be my last sentence that I would say. Let's focus on the joy of gaming rather than the joy of making money.
Thank you so much for bearing with me and for sticking to even the delayed time. Although the Swiss are very much on time with everything,
Yeah,
so
they
I know
just started the session.
I know they must be panicking.
Thank you so much.
So thank you, sir.
Thank you so much. Bye bye.
Over to you swiftly, Mr. Lavu. Thank you for making it. I know you've had a very busy committee day. You can take a breather. You can tell us a little bit about how your day has gone. But also, look, we've heard extensively from Mr. Patra on the kinds of communication that is needed, warranted, etc., from gaming companies to users to help them segregate the good, bad, ugly, the kind of responsible advertising that they should indulge in, and just being able to capacitate their users better, which he feels is something that is still a work in progress. He also feels that as far as your cohort is concerned, parliamentarians, there are about a sixth or a fifth of parliamentarians who are aware, who engage on digital economy issues. That cohort, of course, has to grow. But there is also a need for gaming companies to engage with this cohort more effectively. So just reflect on what your experiences have been in engaging with the gaming community so far, where you found them wanting, and where they can do more. And then we can take it on specifically to the theme and where your parliamentarians hat.
Gaming per se, as you mentioned, I think only 15 to 20% of the parliamentarians actually understand what a massive industry this is. And half of them, out of the 20%, understand what all needs to be done so that this can be formalized and this can be, much more, have much more scrutiny that it can be done. And also, if you see, the best example is the IT industry in India. It has grown in the last 25, 30 years because no politician understand what IT was. If they understood what IT was, they would have put too much of regulation, then they would have slowed it down. But it has grown to such an extent where state economies were dependent on that. So they were like giving as much incentives and, for the job growth and for the economic growth and everything. So it's two-way thing. It's like it's a good thing that not many people understand from parliamentarian side or from the politician side. But on the other side, unlike the IT, this has intervention made by the users. The stories that are coming from the users are, even though it is only 10% of the stories, they are very heartbreaking stories that are coming up. Either way, I don't know if they are playing it on the legal apps or illegal apps. We don't know. But still, those get highlighted. Unlike the IT industry, where if they get a job, they get placed. If they don't have an opportunity, they won't get a job. But here, user gets on it because he has access to the internet. So my suggestion for the gaming industry is to create the narrative, to create a proper narrative for the people like me, people like even in the States as well, so that it's very dicey thing. Gaming, alcohol, all these are very dicey things. So you have to get the narrative, even if it's not strong, at least in a right way, so that the gaming industry in India will grow much, much bigger. Even the central government recently has announced, I think, Center of Excellence in gaming. And so I hope there is a push from the central government side, and even from the states also, few of the states are pushing for it. They understand the potential of this, but get your narrative right. And I wish you all the best.
So what are the ways in which they can communicate this narrative more effectively? Because look, just like in stock markets, or even you've seen in the case of digital lending, you have a lot of sorry stories, a lot of people cutting a sorry figure after losing money. So, how do you differentiate? Firstly, is gaming something special only because the name gaming, so it seems like, look, it's playful, so you can discount it. At least we can chop off this arm of, financial problems that we see, which are systemic. And even if they affect a small chunk of the population, it's perhaps not worth keeping this disease and this arm, so you just cut it off and let the others flourish. How do you change that perception of gaming being something which is for play or which is something just purely recreational to something more serious? And why I'm asking you this question is because you come from a very, very hardcore engineering background. And you're aware of the fact that in many ways, gaming has been at the cutting edge of many, many of those transformational technologies that we are talking about today, whether it's AI, whether it's VR, whether it's voice recognition, whatever it may be, cloud, 5G adoption. All of this is contingent on this so-called recreational activity. So how do we get this messaging right?
So a person like me, if you talk about gaming, unless someone reminds me purposefully, I don't see gaming as something related to, rummy or, poker. This is not something that comes to my mind if someone says gaming. Gaming for me is all about all these video games, and, that is what I get. But there is a other set of people, when you talk about gaming, the only thing that comes to my mind, and majority of them are like that, which comes to their mind is only about these card games. So when you have this kind of, two mindset, who do you cater to? And that's where the messaging is for you. So I feel and I prefer the narrative, the strong narrative from your side should be, gaming is not just about, of course, right now it is majorly pushed by, or a major amount of transactions that are happening are with the card games. But I wish and I want to see the gaming, majority of the gaming goes in the direction that, I look forward to, like the other kind of video games where, you build something. When I'm growing up, we used to play Age of Empires. I think I was too young for that. I think most of you are not born, but still, that we used to have that. And I feel like Facebook right now is working on something on that direction. So I feel if you can get your narrative on that side, saying this is where something gets built, creative solutions happen. So then I think you can convince a lot of people. So I hope that happens.
So that's a good point. I take off from Age of Empires because, strategy. Now, strategy is important for a lot of things in life. And it's important to some of the real money games as well, right? The strategy with which you play poker is going to be a fairly serious strategy if you're a semi-high stakes player or go beyond Diwali to play poker, online or offline. So you would have thought about how people are, what your move should be, how do you self-discipline, and maybe there is some way in which you can extrapolate some of these skills to the real world. So how does that, even when you say, okay, look, when you think of gaming, you think of Age of Empires, but everyone else thinks of poker and rummy. But even when it comes to poker and rummy, there is a serious aspect to poker and rummy. And then there is, of course, a behavioral and a financial harm associated with taking it to an extreme. And anything can be taken to an extreme. So how do we also address this part of it, the part that you feel sometimes gets over-highlighted.
Again, it's the same thing that I want to put it across. How much ever you try to sell it, how much ever you try to convince it, when it comes to the card games, Indian mindset have this.
It's a cultural thing.
Yeah, cultural thing that you're doing something that is not expected of you. But whereas if you're doing, if you spend the same amount of money, more amount of time, doing, playing some other game where you are trying to build or try to create some avatar or something online, there is a cultural thing in Indians' head that it's acceptable.
But do you think this culture is shifting also, like culture is shifting globally so fast in so many realms? Do you see that at all? And do you think that this is more among the older generation, or do you see it in the young generation too, and you are much more in touch with people on the ground than many of us here?
Now, when I recently I made a trip to UK with my son. So he was like, let's play, there's a we came off the gymnastics and he was, he saw some gaming spot there and I was like, yeah, let's go and check it out. And that's what comes to my mind when I go into a gaming zone where kids get engaged, kid gets to play. If we can create those kind of avenues and see that how you can make money out of that, how you can monetize it. I think you're creative enough, you're smart enough to think outside this rummy and poker thing. I'm not trying to put that as a bad thing like other people, but there is so much that can be done in this gaming outside these card games. Don't put all your eggs in this basket, but try to spread it and try to make sure that this genre also get as much players, if not double the players of what you have with the card games right now.
I think one of the things linked to what you've just said, and as we wrap up, is in many industries, the people who have managed to crack some amount of adoption, and therefore they have the means to generate profits, also are the ones who are going to reinvest those surpluses into some of what you're saying, right? So how do we make sure we don't kill the golden goose, achieve what you're saying, and also if you can link that a little bit to how you think about it as someone deeply associated with engineering schools. How do we take this stuff more seriously in our college curriculum, so that, and which by the stuff I mean game development, because then it's a window to a lot of other technologies, and we also discussed briefly with Mr. Patra this dimension, whether it is VR, whether it is AI, whether it is blockchain. The biggest use cases are being seen, or the most popular ones are being seen, oftentimes in gaming.
I think gaming will be the final step. Once you introduce these courses in the schools and colleges, the first step is, if you've seen the edtech firms in the last 5-6 years, they bloomed and they crashed. But if you see most of what the edtech firms are doing and where they'll go in the next 5 to 6 years, they will most probably, I'm sure about it because I'm in the education industry for so many years, they'll be using gaming more in the way they teach. They gamify the whole curriculum, and they want these audio visuals to happen, to make the students see that, make them feel it, and make them, it's the new jargon is like involve them, rather than make it a rote learning. How do you involve them? How do you make sure that they get more hands-on with that? I think that's where the gaming comes in. If you can make them, stepwise process, if you clear the first, it's all we do it for most of you must have finished your engineering, most of you must have gone to IITs or, all this tech, it's all about stepwise. You finish your first chapter, but if you can gamify that, every syllabus can be gamified, every chapter can be gamified. How do you do that? So I think that will be the first step, but at the same time, I feel what need to be done for the gaming is instead of trying to push it into the corner saying it's so, put it too many conditions on it. Free it up. Make sure that people that are working on it, won't take the route as what crypto has to take, wherein they have to go outside the country, they have to innovate outside the country, rather than keep them here, give them new challenges, give them new avenues where they can actually come up with new sort of games, where you must be talking, a lot of people must be talking, we have to have an age restriction, above 18 and everything. I feel Indian gaming industry should go in such a way that, they have games for every age group, so that they can be more involved, they can be used for learning, they can be used for collaborating, they can be used for making some creative products. So I feel that is the direction that we all should go. If a parent is going to pay 10,000 rupees or 15,000 rupees per month to get some tuition happen or some coaching happen, why can't gaming industry think in the direction? Let me gamify this whole thing and make it more enjoyable for the student, not just a kid who is above 18-year-old, but why can't I make it for the 10-year-old, 12-year-old? Make the parent pay for it. So I think you should think in the direction. I'm sure you are all creative people who are sitting here. I'm sure you'll think in that direction. I want this gaming industry to thrive, and it should be the capital, because we lost the last time as well, because we became, instead of product development country, we became the service development country. At least with the industry 4.0, I wish more products get developed here, more products get exported from here, rather than get imported from other countries. And once again, I wish all of you good luck, all the best.